Welcome to Warfighter Sanctuary. Here we talk with local veteran business owners, their military journey, civilian life, their business, and the services they offer.
I am the soldier's lost voice. Come on!
Lock it in and listen up. Here's your host, Rivera.
Is this what they want?
Welcome to the Warfighter Sanctuary podcast. I'm your host, Rivera. And today our guest is Rob Rivera, which happens to be my first cousin. We grew up together. We lived together in Jersey for a few years. He also enlisted in the military. We come from a military family. Our grandfather served in the Army and the Air Corps. And Rob Rivera enlisted in the Army, not the Marine Corps. And he also became an EMT, where he was on location on 9/11 Ground Zero during 9/11. He was a rookie. He was 3 months in the job, which is incredible. And we'll hear a little bit about that as well. He is also a business owner. So here at the Warfighter Sanctuary podcast, we interview veteran businesses. He'll discuss a little bit about his business and his transition from the military to the civilian sector. Kind of gave you a little spoiler on being a rookie as an EMT and first 3 months on the job, one of the toughest experiences. I'm sure we'll get into that as well. And we'll also talk about his service, because his service, he's had several MOSs. I think that runs in our family. We're not happy with just one job. We like to be jack of all trades. And let's get right into it. So Rob Rivera, thank you and welcome to the show, Warfighter Sanctuary. Please tell us a little bit about your business and what services you provide.
Andre, first, thanks so much for having me as a guest on this. I've seen some of the shows in the past. I've really enjoyed watching them, so to be a part of it is definitely a privilege.
Outstanding.
And as far as the whole Army military thing, listen, we can't all be perfect, okay? We have all makes mistakes. No, but I did enjoy my time in the service. As far as my role goes in my private sector now, I've been in business for about 15 years. It was one of those jobs that came out of necessity. After I was injured in the military, I had to sort of pick up and figure out what to do next, and I had some background in photography, so I said, gotta survive, right? That's what we do, we're survivors. And so I said, well, I take that knowledge and try to harness that and go from there. So it's been 15 years of doing photography. We started doing videography a couple of years ago, and then started offering photo booths as well. So for someone that's having a private event, we can really kind of work our team and make sure that we're covering all ends of things.
Excellent. So you said photo booths. So what was that? Oh, so that couples can take pictures together.
Right. Yeah, and of course, nothing we do is ever simple. We always kind of try to go to the next level with everything that we do. And so when it comes to the photo booth, it's not like something that you would go in a box. Nobody likes to be in a casket, so we have an open air photo booth, very chic, red carpet, stanchions, the whole 9 yards. Make it look nice. So
got it. So what else does it entail for wedding photography?
It's a task. When you start learning how to do photography, it's interesting because you learn different styles. So you'll do landscape photography, maybe you'll start taking on some portraits, maybe some small events. But to do things like a wedding, you're utilizing every type of photography there is. You're doing portraits, you're doing landscapes, you're doing macro, you're doing sports, you're doing all these different things, nightlife, and you're all doing it in one day. And so you have to make sure that you have a good team with you. I mean, there's nothing more important than that, is your team. And then also making sure that everyone on the team knows their roles and responsibilities so they can go ahead and execute that appropriately.
Absolutely, because I can imagine how challenging it is, because you have one take, really. You can't reduplicate the wedding and have everybody come back tomorrow.
No seconds.
And you're trying to capture a moment, a very important moment in people's lives, probably one of the most important, if not the most important pinnacle of their life. It's like a phase, getting married. Yeah. I would know because I've never been married.
Right.
But honestly, I understand the significance and how important and critical that is. So you have to capture all that and that essence of that day for, and then of course you create a video as well, right? So
right, absolutely. And it's really interesting because as you're going through this process and as you're trying to make sure that you're getting the job done, that's only half of it. And same thing when I was an EMT. 95% of the calls, someone's not dying. 95% of the calls are okay, it's something that's manageable, nothing's gonna happen in an hour or so, things are okay, person's still breathing, we're okay. But it's no different when you're doing a wedding, because realistically, taking pictures or doing video, it matters and it's great and it's important, of course, but being there for your client and forming that relationship and rapport with your client and with their family and with their guests, some of which are intoxicated, whatever the case is, dealing with all those different challenges, that's what really makes us different than most other companies. Being a support structure for these people is what changes everything.
And I can see that too, because during the wedding, for example, and I know a little bit because with real estate, we'll take photos,
Right.
but you want to check. Sometimes it's challenging because there's people there, and then you have to be smooth, and those are nuances that you don't. How do you put that in a brochure?
Right.
Really good at deconflicting challenges that are happening. That you know what I mean, and that takes a lot of effort just to make it run smooth.
Absolutely.
So it goes just as they imagined and they dreamed of all this time.
Spot on. Matter of fact, every time I meet with a client, and we always require at least 2 meetings with a client prior to, one of the things we always lay out to them is, look, we're not wedding coordinators, but we're going to kind of act like that. We're going to be on your side. We're going to, if we need to call a florist or call a limo, whatever the case is, we're going to do that. Like, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure the day goes smoothly, because we know ultimately in the end, the more of a support we are for the client, the happier and easier the day is going to be for that client. The better day they're going to have, the better smiles they're going to have. The better smiles they're going to have, the better images they're going to have. So by taking that stress off of them, even though it's not our job, so to speak, it's going to ultimately affect our job. And so that's why we do all those things.
Awesome. Now, do you just do weddings, or are there other type of events that you do, like bar mitzvahs?
Yeah, we're open. We do all sorts of events. Yeah, absolutely. We do them all, and we do travel as well. So I mean, we've gone to. I mean, we've shot in Florida, Virginia. Matter of fact, I was in Virginia shooting 3 weeks ago, I think. And so we're traveling about. Going to DC, and even if we needed to, we can go up to Canada or Mexico. It's not a problem.
And your whole team goes.
Yeah, depending on what the needs are of that client.
Okay, depending.
Yeah.
So your team could be as small as and as big as what?
It could be small as 2 people, as big as 5 people. It really depends on what the needs are.
Okay.
One thing I'll say is that we always operate as a partnership team, and so I don't care if it's a small wedding, we're gonna have 2 people there. We need that redundancy in place, because everyone's heard these nightmare stories of like, oh, they lost my pictures or they lost my video, whatever. We don't have that happen, and it's because we plan for those things. We don't wait till the bad things happen.
That's military training.
It is military training.
And EMT training.
Absolutely.
Where
absolutely.
they say 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so funny because, a lot of the things that we do, it comes from that military ideology. Even, I'm not even exaggerating.
Checklists.
Oh yeah, checklists, check, double check, the whole 9 yards. Even the way our photographers hold the cameras, making sure that they're holding a breathing control, all those things that you don't really think about. It matters because it's a, like you said before, it's a one-shot deal. There's no double takes, so we got to make sure we do it correctly. We even communicate with each other using in-ear radios. I mean, we're very legit about the way we do things, and we're very tactical in our approach. So
excellent,
yeah.
Excellent. Is there anything else you want to add about your business?
I mean, I can go ahead and give a shameless plug to 123imaging.com.
Absolutely, do that.
That's definitely
That's the whole purpose of this podcast. We're promoting veteran businesses, which you helped me create. And we're going to talk about that near the end.
Sounds good. I feel some orange coming our way. So yeah, it is definitely one of those things. We started our business, like I said, a while back, and it was under my name. It was Rob Rivera Photography, and and so on, etc. But then as we started advancing and growing the business into different areas, we said, you say photography, and that just pigeonholes you. So we needed to reevaluate how we're portraying ourselves to these potential clients, and that's why we said 123 Imaging. We offer 3 different services. We can do it all. We make it easy, and alphabetically it helps. And so the 3 we have is the photography, we have the videography, and then we have the booths. So the photo booths, and so those 3 things. Now there's other things we can add on, like drone imaging and things like that. But absolutely, those are our 3 core services that we offer, and so far it's been really good. We did 36 weddings last year alone.
Wow!
So we've been hustling.
Yeah. Excellent. And obviously, you figured out how to scale this, because you started off at 2, you have 5 now, and you can probably go further than that if you have to.
Yeah. Scaling is definitely an important approach in any business. But like I said before, as I started out with, even there's nothing more challenging than finding good team members. I can have the best gear in the world. I can have the best advertising in the world. I can have a degree in how to market, but it means nothing if your team is not reliable. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't really give as much consideration to as they should. And so, you know, fortunately, you know, we have some really good people. I have some good photographers now that I'm working with, and good video people also that I'm working with, and our team is constantly expanding. So it's been really a roller coaster through the years.
So Rob, tell me a little bit about your transition from the military to the civilian sector. The good, the bad, some of the challenges, you know, and how quickly was it that you found the job after the military? And just talk about that, and what it took to attain the job of owning that business.
Sure.
In imaging and photography, and videography.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the military back in 1998. Did my basic in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Went to Huachuca. I think you spent some time.
I've been to Leonard Wood as well.
Oh, were you really? Sorry to hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I knocked that all out. That was about 8 months, and then after that, then they sent me back home to do my reserve duty. Didn't take long before I was like, I want to do more. You know, I want to be more active, but at the same time now I have a baby. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? So there was a first aid squad, maybe 2 blocks, not even, a block from my house. So I decided to join that. So I did that simultaneously while I was also in the military. And I did that for a long time. Fast forward, I got out of the military in 2010 after the injury. At the same time, I could no longer do my job in emergency services. I lost everything at that point in time because of the injury. And so I said, well, you know, I gotta pick up and keep surviving, gotta keep breathing. And so I said, well, I know some things about photography. It doesn't seem like it's that laborious. Let me see if it's something I can do. It was hard. It was hard because of the back injury. You know, having had 3 surgeries and really just kind of endured a lot. I now have prosthetics in my back and it helps me function. Doesn't mean I'm not in pain, as you know, with back injuries. So, you know, it's still there every day and it haunts me every day. And I feel it every day. But, you know, you gotta, to some degree, you gotta suck it up and say, you know what? It's hard to complain about that. I'm in pain, boo-hoo, when these other people either didn't come home or came home, you know, not whole the way they left. And so it's really difficult. But again, you suck it up, you push forward. And so I said, all right, well, let me see what I can do with this now. You know, I got some knowledge in photography. Let me see what I can do with it. I had 2 family friends of ours. One was named Lorenzo, and he had a studio that did, I mean, amazing studio work. And so he's doing everything from like J.C. Penney's to like Maserati to you name it. It's a lot of studio high-end work. Great guy. Shout out to him. And then I had another guy who was a friend who I knew from EMS, and his name was Mark. Mark did destination weddings. He'd go to Punta Cana, DR, all these other places.
Nice.
Sounds tragic, right? Great guy also, but again, a very different style. Both of those guys took me under their wings and kind of showed me, you know, their ways of doing things. And then taking that along with some knowledge that I had from both school I had, and my father was, you know, an amateur enthusiast with photography as well. Putting all of them together and kind of creating my own was really a work in progress. And I think it's always a work in progress because you're always refining your skill set. And so that's how I began the business, and that was back in 2010. Fast forward to 15 years, and here we are. Now it's 2024. Halfway through that already, and we're doing photography, videography, photo booths, doing 36 weddings last year, like I mentioned before. Just keeping ourselves busy and keeping ourselves expanding into different markets and different areas. So we're still shooting out of state. We're still shooting, different forms. So we're ready to keep going with it.
Awesome, yeah. Awesome. So let me ask you this: like, what in the military that you learned? Because we didn't talk too much about that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your military service. And I kind of want to get into the skill sets that you learned through your MOSs, and you have some multiple MOSs. Like, right. How did that help you with your business?
Yeah.
And did it or did it not apply? Because I get that a lot. We get the infantry guys will say, what could I learn by becoming an infantryman? But then they find that, hey, maybe a lot of the skill sets of discipline, of being able to wake up on time and just grind as much as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
I go, those are great skill sets, even though it looks like at first look, it looks like it's irrelevant, but it's actually critical.
It is. It absolutely is.
So let's talk about that.
And I can look at every single job I had in the military, and I had 4 MOSs.
So start with the first one and how you...
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first job I had in the military was doing military intelligence, specifically imagery. And so
So explain what imagery is.
Yeah, imagery analyst. So basically, we would look at products. We would look at imagery, whether it's satellite imagery, drone imagery, whatever it is, aerial reconnaissance, and we would have to determine what was in that image. And really, I mean, for the civilian or for the layperson, it looked like someone sneezed on a piece of paper, and you got to be able to interpret exactly what it was. It's a T-72 with revetted armament. It's this, it's that. And so, we had to be proficient in identifying everything. I don't care if it was a SAM site or whether it's an antenna. Like, we had to know everything. And so it was definitely it was the highest attrition rated program as far as MOSs in the military, in the Army at that time. And so it was definitely a challenge, but bring it on, And so I think that really kind of honed my skills in terms of being able to, just really lock in on the most minute of details. Something that would seem so insignificant to one person can mean all the difference between, survival or not. If there's not those three elements for a Scud missile, it's not going to go anywhere, right? So, we had to know all these different things. And so, taking that into imagery, from like the military side to the civilian side, you really pay attention to these things now. Things, again, that people wouldn't really pay attention to. And then after I did that, I switched over to military police, and that was out in Queens, actually, Jamaica, Queens. And so I did military police work for a little bit. It wasn't
Jamaica, Queens. That's where
our unit was. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even think they're there anymore. But it was one of those things where it was something I always wanted to do. First of all, even when I was first going in, I said, I sat down and I said, look, this is what I want to do: either intel or military police. And of course, they gave me all the jobs that no one wanted, and I said, no, I'm ready to walk out. And they're like, oh, we got something for you. Okay. So I got a chance to do my military policing, and that was enjoyable. And I think that was just much more disciplined, just being a little more rigid in what we were doing. Not that intel was not rigid, but just in a different way. How you carried yourself, how you presented yourself made a bigger difference, because you're representing not just your unit, but you're representing the entire facility, right? That installation or that base. And so that's where that kind of came into play. And then I went into chemical operations, and chemical operations was a little more scientific, and I am not a science guy. If it involves science or math, I'm out, right? Like, I really generally want nothing to do with it.
Explain that. What is it? Chemical what?
Yeah, chemical operations.
Chemical operations.
Right. So our job is
also like nukes,
it could be anything. It could be it could have been anything. CBRN. So like whether it's chemical, nuclear, biological, radiological, anything like that,
Gotcha.
we were focused on. And so it was a really pretty awful job, to be honest. But I think that kind of showed me, to deal with a situation, even when you're not happy with it, even when it's just a miserable experience. If they're going to want you to go into a certain area and test to see if this is lethal or not, it's not a good job. Okay,
yeah.
It's not a good job. I mean, you're the guinea pig, right? So, like they send the pigeons or whatever it is into the mines. That's what you are, right? And so, I think learning to suck it up and deal with it. I think that was kind of there. And when you're doing the job that I'm doing now, it's obviously not comparable in the way of life or death. But at the same time, it is a miserable experience sometimes when it's a hot day, wet day, snowy day. You're out there anyways. Your gear's out there that you spent thousands of dollars on, and you're risking it for this moment. It makes a difference, and so you suck it up and you deal with it. And then finally, my last job was infantry. And infantry, it kind of felt at home, because the camaraderie that was there was like none other. Number one, and then number two was the fact that I guess same thing like before. You're quickly realizing that every little detail does matter. Every detail matters. If your weapon is not cleared out correctly or cleaned out correctly, like that makes a difference. That makes a huge difference. Last thing you want is for a failure. And so that's why we're learning all these weapon systems and everything else, and going through that whole process. I'm like, okay, I get it. Also, I loved the drone ceremony part of that. And so when I went back to my unit, I said, is there anything else that's out there? What else can I do with this? And they said, well, there's an honor guard team we're forming up in New Jersey, whatever. I'm like, well, listen, I'm in. I'm game. I used to play around when I was in JROTC in high school back in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. I loved it. I've been in the military X amount of years now. I know what I'm doing. And so I was like, let me apply for it. I applied for it, tested for it, got into it. And so I did over 200 military funerals, and that was the job I loved the most in the military.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the reason why I love that job the most in the military is because there was no politics. There was no BS. Everything was real the way it is. And
You can't change that. You can't really change it. You have to
Right.
think about that.
Yeah.
Anything in the military we can change. We can make this better. We can make this
Right.
table, man portable.
yes,
You know?
exactly. Just rethinking it.
Yeah, we need to rechange this and change it, but
Yeah.
you can't change a funeral.
No, you cannot change a funeral, and it has to just be so spot on and precise. But I loved it because I can make movements and know my partner's gonna make those movements, and I'm not even gonna see them. I'm just gonna hear the click of that heel, and that was just gold to me. I loved doing that. Absolutely loved doing that. So after 12 years, that's when it all came to a close, and that's when I began my business. So.
Wow. And what's interesting about your career is you did it backwards, if I could say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Usually
Yes.
it's like infantry goes first.
Yeah.
Usually like the 18-year-old kid joins the infantry. Then after 4 years, he's either like, man, I want to be a captain in the infantry, or he's like, I want to get the hell out of the infantry. Because I knew a lot of like sergeants and staff, so I'm like, all right, I did my time in the Marine Corps as an infantryman, now it's time to get out.
Yeah.
Rarely do you see anyone that does 20 years of infantry, although it happens, but it's rare.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then usually like after 4 to 6 years, if your back goes out, shin splints,
Yeah.
all types of leg injuries and knee and ankles and all of that.
Good times. Good
100
times.
pounds on your back.
Yeah.
They usually switch. You did it the other way around.
Oh, yeah, I did it way.
You did the desk work first.
Yeah, so here's what happened.
And
it
then
was,
you decide, I want a 100-pound pack
No, yeah,
on my
so-
back. I want to go 10, 20 miles.
I know it's going to sound very strange, and it'll definitely
Yeah.
sound strange to any civilians who may watch this. But my intention of changing my job was not because, I was dissatisfied with doing intel or whatever the case was. That's a job a lot of people try to get into, like you were
Yeah.
saying. It's the opposite. The thing was
They're higher
that
paying jobs because you have what clearance did you have?
TSSCI. Yeah.
When you did your
Yeah.
so people don't understand that TSSCI is like one of the highest. I had that. It's a top secret.
Sensitive compartment.
Sensitive compartmentalized information.
Right.
And that's what I had.
Yeah,
it's like one of the highest
Yeah.
clearances you can have.
Exactly.
And people try to get that.
Just to have that, so they
Just
can
to
get a
get
job
that.
afterwards.
Yeah. They try to go.
Right.
They go. This is how it usually goes. They go infantry. Then they're like, what? You gotta get a TSS, and then they try their best to get a TSSCI. You already had a TSSCI.
Yeah, I had
And then
it.
you're like, you know what? I want to go infantry. Just so
Yeah.
people are clear.
Yeah. Okay. So
How that works.
I can't deny that I'm crazy, right? For
That's
doing
a little
that.
crazy. I'm trying to
But-
explain how crazy that is.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's
Yeah.
completely not normal. You do
Yeah.
not do that. You go the other way. But
Yeah.
and then there's nothing. And don't get me wrong. Not to take anything away from the infantry, right?
Yeah.
But my goal was to get deployed. At the time, when I first signed in, everything was just fine. I mean, like in '98, there's nothing. '99, there's nothing going on, right? Like we're drill and ceremoning. Like we're just messing around. Like not doing a whole lot. Things changed obviously on 9/11, and so once 9/11 came around, and you start seeing your vehicles getting painted tan instead of green, you're like, oh, this is getting real quick, right? So, for me, I didn't ever have the intention of, oh, I want to go. Like nobody wants to go like that, and if you do, maybe something wrong, right? But that's okay. That's another
I
story.
think most of us want to go.
Well, to a degree, you want to do something. You want to do more, and I think for me,
We don't want to go to
you
just
know,
some random war, but we want to go improve all the stuff that we trained for.
Yes.
Like I trained for 10 years, so like when I got the call, I was excited. I was like, okay, now I get to find out if all that training was good.
Effective. Right.
And if I have what it takes.
Yeah.
After all the heroes that I grew up watching, do I have just a smidgen of what they have?
Right. Plus, not only that, but it really gives your role purpose. Because you can drill all you want at home, but it's a different
Exactly.
thing to be like, oh, we're getting called up for this.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was very frustrating because I went through all this school, the highest failure rate in the military, blah blah blah, and we were working it. Don't get me wrong, we were doing our job here for there. That much I can say.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, it's very indiscriminate thing when you're trying to make these decisions and you're trying to identify what's in this image, right? And that's people's lives. That's people's dads, uncles, brothers. Sometimes wives or daughters, right? Like, and so that was very difficult to deal with. Along with the fact that on the civilian side, I'm trying to save people's lives. So you're trying to save people's lives on one end, and you're making decisions that are going to adversely affect
So
others.
as an EMT.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was definitely mentally challenging. But then beyond that was to see my colleagues, my fellow soldiers getting deployed, and I'm still sitting here. And so I'm like, well, okay, it happened. All right, it just wasn't my time, I guess. You know, meanwhile, we're in now 2 conflicts, Iraq, Afghanistan, and I'm still sitting at home and I'm watching these people go. And I'm like, that's not right. So they're talking about.
But
hey,
at this time, what was your MOS though? Your imagery?
I was still intel, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. Imagery, they don't typically send you on the ground. Your imagery, you
exactly.
You look behind the computer.
Yes.
You look at like and I'm oversimplifying it, but you look at tank tracks, and you look at like garbage, trash that was left somewhere.
Yep.
And then you look by looking at satellite photographs. You say, hey, there was 3 platoons here. They moved north 3 miles, and they unloaded a bunch of gear here, and that's what imagery is, oversimplified.
Right. And it's an important role,
critical.
But they're not going to send you out for that.
But they don't need you to be in the front, and that's why I'm trying to explain it. They don't need you to be with a knife in the front lines, checking mines or anything.
Exactly.
And that's why you weren't being deployed during a time of conflict.
And that's why
that was bothering, and that's why you switched.
That's why I switched.
And that's why I wanted to explain. That's what I was getting at. That's
absolutely.
Why you switched MOSs so you had to increase the probability of you going to get deployed.
Correct.
Not because you're a warmonger, but because you just felt like it was your duty. You saw a lot of other people getting deployed.
Absolutely.
Your first cousin getting deployed.
Absolutely.
And you're like, hey, I need to get deployed.
Right.
And that's why you switched over to infantry.
It was my turn.
And you still didn't get deployed, or you did?
Well, no. So it wasn't even the infantry yet.
Yes.
You know, that's why I was like, all right, military. They're talking about a lot of prisoners. I'm like, oh, cool, military police, perfect. Weapons mass destruction. Remember that?
Yep.
That's why I went chemical.
So then you went there.
And then eventually, yeah.
And then eventually infantry.
Infantry, yeah. And so that's why I chased those MOSs, because I wanted the opportunity. And despite being on the volunteer list, I was still not getting sent. So that was my saga.
The rationale. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and that's why when you put it that way with the timeline, it makes all kinds of sense why you did what you did. You being from the Northeast, where we're from the same place, Jersey, New York area.
Absolutely.
You know, and 9/11 having an impact on you, because I remember seeing it. You know, I remember I was living in Miami at the time, but like that I grew up there. That was my hometown. That was our hometown.
Absolutely. You know, and you just get used to. You get used to seeing it all, you know. You glance over towards the city. That's the first thing you're going to see. And so
can we talk about that now? Can we switch over and talk about 9/11?
Yeah, we can jump right in. Yeah.
Okay, so you're EMS, 3 months on the job.
Yeah.
And then you're basically a rookie.
Oh yeah.
How long are you a rookie? So people put this in project, like from the day one when you put on your uniform to after the academy and everything.
Yeah. So
when are you no longer considered rookie?
I mean, generally, usually it's about 6 months to a year. You're considered like probationary, or you're still weapon.
So you're probationary. You're 3 months in the job. So what happens? 3 months into the job.
Yeah. So night before.
One of the biggest catastrophes in American history.
Absolutely.
Biggest attacks in American history from a foreign country, 9/11, and you were there.
Yep.
You get calls up.
Yeah, so I had worked the night before. That was my duty night before. We got slammed, man. I mean, like we had calls back to back to back. We were just shot out. The night before.
Just coincidentally, there just happened to be a bunch of stuff going on the night before. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
like a full moon or something.
Yeah, usually we'll get 3 to 5 calls in a night. That night, I think we had like 7 to 10. I can't remember how many. It was like 7 to 10. It was busy.
7 to 10.
Yeah, it was.
And where were you
crazy.
working at the time?
Yeah, at the time I was working in Edison Township, New Jersey, which is right. If you look at New Jersey, it's right smack dab in the middle.
Yeah.
And so that's.
I want to create a map so people understand how you even got to the towers.
Yeah, absolutely. So Edison's proximity to New York City is probably about. I mean, you could be in Staten Island in about 15 minutes. You could be in Manhattan in about maybe 25 minutes, somewhere in there, depending on traffic, obviously. Just got a lot of traffic. And so, I worked the night before. I got off duty around 7 a.m., went home, went to sleep. I'm knocked out. Nothing in the world is waking me up except for one phone call. And that's if my sister calls me. And of course, my sister calls me. So she calls me up, wakes me up, and she's like, turn on the TV. I'm like, listen, I love you. I love you with all my heart. But I just had a night. I'm not trying to get up. I'm going to sleep right now. I'm done. I'm spent. She goes, trust me, put it on. That's all I got to hear. I'm like, all right. So I go, turn on TV. TV starts warming up. Yep, old school TVs. Starts warming up, and just at that very moment, I see number 2. Boom. Plane goes in. I'm like, I gotta go. I'm like, is this live? She goes, yeah, it's live. I'm like, I gotta go. So, I'm already exhausted, but all of a sudden you get that boost of energy, you get that adrenaline going in you, and sleep doesn't matter anymore. So I grab my stuff, grab my bag, go running over to the building, didn't even take my car. Literally ran to the building because it was only a block away. I'm like, faster I get there, better. Get there, start popping open all the bays and start getting all the equipment ready. Nobody's there. Building's empty during the daytime, unless a call comes in. And so I just figured, well, game on. We got a challenge, we got to face it. So I said, all right. Phone starts ringing, and people are calling me and asking, like, hey, are we getting deployed? Are we getting, are we gonna get called up for this? And I'm like, listen, if you're watching the same thing that I'm watching, there's no way we're all going to be involved in this. Not realizing how true those words actually were, meaning we all, right, as Americans. But so people slowly started making their way to the building, because it's daytime. They're working. A lot of them are volunteers, and so. As soon as we had enough people, which requires an EMT, off probation EMT, a driver, and then myself. As soon as we had enough people, the captain would sent us down to the fire academy, which was where we all would stage, and so that's what we did. And so we got in our truck, went down to fire academy. As soon as there were 10 trucks there, we're like, all right, cool. Now we get a debrief. We have enough for a task force. So then our task force gets debriefed by, I'm going to guess, the Office of Emergency Management for Middlesex County. And then, and then off we were to head over to Jersey City, of all places. So, Jersey City is, for anyone who doesn't know, is literally across the river from Manhattan. I mean, it's eye shot, it's right there. And so we went there because that's where all the evacuees are going. And so the boats coming over from Manhattan, that's where they're landing. And so most of the people who got off of them were okay. There were some walking wounded, some injuries, some stuff that came over, but most of the people there were okay. So we were just doing basic triage, we're getting it done, whatever the case is. Now, by the time this is happening, the towers are already down. Like, this did not take long. Like, things are moving really fluid. And so they took a bunch of us off of that. And we were really kind of pissed off, to be honest with you. They took a bunch of us off of that and said, nope, you guys are leaving, you're going somewhere else. We had no idea where we're going. All we knew is we're not going to be taking care of these patients anymore. And so we're like, all right, where do you have us going? So they bring us up to Weehawken, which is maybe about a 15, 20-minute drive north. It's the other side of the Lincoln Tunnel. And so we go up to Weehawken, and Weehawken, we're sitting in a parking lot. Now there's like probably 20 ambulances, and we're all just kind of sitting there doing nothing. There's no patients, there's no triaging, there's no nothing happening, and we're like, what are we doing here? Why'd you get us here? Like, we're getting angry. And so about 15 minutes goes by, and this cop on a motorcycle comes around to us, and he looks directly at us, and he's like, you guys ready to go? And we're like, yeah, let's go. Whatever you got us going is better than this. So he says, all right, follow me. Get in your truck, follow me. All right. So we start following him. And before we know it, now all the bridges and tunnels are closed, okay? Like, they're closed. Manhattan looks like a fire in a log in a fireplace, just smoldering. I mean, there's more smoke than you can ever even imagine. And the next thing you know, we're going down the Lincoln Tunnel, right through the center line, cop in front of us, cop behind us, and just watching the lights bouncing off the walls, and we end up on the other side in Manhattan, and we pop out, and it was the weirdest time I've ever been there. And I would be in Manhattan all the time, and there's a lot of weird things in Manhattan, as you know, but the feeling of arriving on that side of the tunnel and getting into the city was different, because when you're in Manhattan, people have places to go. Nobody's meandering. People are walking in a direction. They're moving with a purpose, right? And this was not the case. So people are literally kind of just standing around, looking up, crossing the crosswalk halfway and then stopping and backtracking. Nobody knew where to. It was like ants in an ant farm. Nobody knew what they were doing, where to go, or how to handle the situation. It was just beyond bizarre. So we get to our location that we're going to. And we park our vehicle. We're supposed to take our equipment out and set up a triage at this location. And it was the first thing I saw when I got out of my truck was there was a small school bus, like one of those, like almost like a senior citizens bus, and they're just loading it with body bags that are filled. And I'm like, wow, things just got real, and then we're in this like garage area, and then just loading them.
One after another.
One after the other. And I go to my partner. I'm like, look, have you seen this? Like, it's incomprehensible. And so we set up this triage site, and our job was to staff this triage site. And this was one of the mental challenges of that day, more so than most, and not what people would expect, but just seeing nobody in this triage area. Now, the triage area was set up for the police officers and firefighters who were in the buildings. And so once they collapsed, the mindset was, well, rescuers and responders will get them out, bring them directly to this triage site on location, and then we'll treat and then make determinations on which hospital they're going to go to, because the hospitals were all on weird standbys and everything else. So you can imagine. But there was nobody there, and we waited for a little while, and there was not one firefighter, not one police officer that was in the buildings, and we're like, where are they? Where are they? It took me years to realize that we were breathing them in, is what happened. These people were pulverized. They were just not there. Most of them were not even found. A lot of people that were in the buildings were never found. They found pieces of bones on rooftops years later. I mean, the amount of energy that was in those buildings when they collapsed, when you're taking out subway stations that are underneath, when you're blowing out power banks and everything else, it was just incredible. And so yeah, none of them came out, and that was tough. That was really, really tough. And so we decided, let's open up our doors and let's start triaging just civilians, just people who are on the street, and that's what we did. We continued doing that until about 11 p.m. that night, and then we got relief.
So just to be clear, Rob, because I want to make sure I'm following this. So the building that you went to triage, there was supposed to be first responders there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was empty because those first responders went out to save people, but they never made it back.
Correct.
I just want to be clear. Wow.
Yeah, and that was beyond tough. That was beyond tough because we knew some of them were going to be deceased. We knew that.
You didn't realize that, like platoons or whatever the equivalent is.
343 firefighters, multiple paramedics,
didn't make it back.
Scores of police officers, just never made it back.
And when you got to that scene, you were devastated because you kept waiting for them.
Yeah, we were waiting.
All the equipment, all the gear was there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just crushed. Everything was just crushed. And so, basically, we didn't have the opportunity to help those people, and that was difficult. But I'm at least glad that we did open up and start triaging for regular people, because obviously there was a need.
There was still a need,
yeah. And another eerie aspect of the day was, and I know I fast forwarded over a lot, and that was partly deliberate, I think. But I remember, even after we got off duty, 11 o'clock at night, and we crossed back over, and they let us through because obviously we're emergency services. Nobody else can get through, but we can get through. But I remember that as we're coming back down to go back home to Edison, New Jersey, looking over to the right and seeing the Meadowlands, and it was illuminated. No game on, but it was illuminated because that was supposed to be the morgue. That was supposed to be where everybody was going to want, all the bodies were going to go to, the bodies that were never found. And then on the left, you see the glow from Lower Manhattan, just bouncing off of the smoke and debris that was still coming off of it. It was just crazy, man. It was absolutely crazy. But but again, we finally got back home and we pulled into our parking lot, and all these people are waving these signs and everything. And that was another part of the day where I was just like, what are they doing? That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Signs? What do you mean?
Thank you so much. Appreciation signs. Nothing bad. But they were cheering and applauding us like we just came back from Omaha Beach. Listen, any one of these people would have done the same thing in a heartbeat without asking twice. So that was difficult for me too. And so that's kind of sort of the Cliff Notes version of the day. I don't know if you have specific questions on the day, but that was the Cliff Notes version of the day on 9/11. So.
And how did that affect you afterwards, as far as, because you're a rookie?
Yeah.
So we talked about how you're probationary for 6 months to a year. To me, that feels like you went through the accelerated.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that, I'm half joking, but I'm also being serious, because for those that don't know, and I know a lot of people, me being a New Yorker, me being in military and DOD defense for so many years, I know a lot of folks involved.
Right.
So they told me, folks that were on the ground at 9/11 have said that it was the worst catastrophe, because there was every type of death. There was drowning, there was crushing, there was falling, there was electrocutions, there was explosions, pulverized, there was every type of death. And that's why it's also affected so many people, because they got to see everything in in the span of hours.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, I think the other aspect is, and not taking away from people who have been in conflict, right? But these are innocent civilians, all of them. are innocent civilians, and it's just
Yeah.
like, like
different.
what? Who does this, right? Like, I get, I get the idea of making statements. I get the idea of, protesting and even taking up arms. I get that, but
Targeting civilians.
Specifically, yeah.
That's
That's
the difference between us and them. That's when people say, what's the dividing line? The dividing line is that's terrorism, because you're using civilians for a political cause to create fear and terror in people to bend to your will.
Right.
That's not the verbatim, but that is pretty much the definition of terrorism.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they're doing.
Absolutely, and to deal with that and to be on the ground dealing with those sorts of situations, it's tough. It's tough. In my career as an EMT, I've seen it all. I've dealt with it all. And it's tragic sometimes. When you see, multiple fatalities or whatever the case is, and I've been in the middle of it many times. It's bad and it's tough and it messes with you, but you can at least rationalize this was an accident, or even if it's something like a crime, whatever the case is, this is terrible, but there's a scale to it that's digestible to some degree. Something like 9/11, almost 3,000 people. It's really just nothing that you can ever truly wrap your head around. You can just be able to harness it enough that it doesn't control you. Yeah, it took me about 7 years to even be able to talk about it, to be able to even really kind of, digest to some degree. Went down to the anniversary actually with a couple good EMTs who were either there or directly or indirectly. Some good guys. We were able to actually walk down into the pit because it was still hollowed out at the time, and they had these little temporary pools set up and everything. And we were down there right at the time when the bell was ringing because it's that time. It's that memorial time. And so I guess the words that really kind of got to me were, do all you can for those you can reach. That's how I rationalized, because a lot of you thinks, what if we got there quicker? What if I woke up earlier? What if my sister called me faster? What if I drove, like all these what ifs and everything. Like what? But in reality, what are you going to do? You're going to hold the buildings up with your bare hands? No. So, there's nothing wrong with being there for people and trying to be there for people, but you have to also understand that there's a limit to it, and there's only so much that you can do. And so that was my mantra, and that's been my mantra ever since. Tattooed on my arm. So, yeah.
But that is something really hard to wrap your head around, because the acts of these people. But it's like like you try to rationalize like a serial killer, like he's killing someone because he gets off on it.
Right.
But then you rationalize with these people, they're doing it because the people that actually did it, not the people that. See, to me, the people that actually physically did it, and the people that planned it are two types of different people. The people that planned it for political and financial reasons. The people that actually physically did it are just puppets, just pawns.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And their ideological reason for doing it was for like God and Islam and all this radical Islam type deal. To kill all these people. And somehow, when you get people that convince themselves that this type of vile act will somehow get them to heaven, like how do you rationalize? You can't rationalize with that type of person, because they believe in all that magic and sorcery, like in some kind of movie, some fiction book or something.
And that's the
like
interesting
Lords
part.
of the Rings. They're like, yeah, if I kill these 3,000 people, the Lord will do this. Like insane.
And that's the interesting part too. When you really start, kind of diving into it. Like after I got in the military and I started my business, I also went back to school. And I started going for criminal justice and all these other things, and I started really getting a better understanding of, not just, cause and effect, but like what actually is going on the other side of this, right? And as weird and ironic and strange as it may sound, you have to remember, and I'm not justifying in any way, believe me, but you have to understand that everyone who was involved in 9/11, whether they were
financier,
yeah, exactly.
terrorist,
right. They all thought they were doing the right thing. And just like you said, it is a matter of manipulation, it is puppeting, but, it's interesting to understand that they thought that what they were doing, crashing those things, it was a good thing, it was right.
Come out of it.
Exactly. And you always, but it's a life lesson though, right? Because if you start taking that approach with everything, you start automatically saying, okay, it's very easy for me to be like, this person's wrong, or whatever the case is, or they're a bad person. But are they really? We have morals and standards and laws in place, and we're in the right place, right? With USA, I mean, we are in the place to be for this. But at the same time, overcoming a conflict, with whether it's a coworker or whether it's just a friend even, it's about understanding their perception of things, right? Their side of things. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we get it, but I don't want to go so far that I could, because with that rationale, everybody's good, and it's not true.
No, it's not.
And what I'm getting at is their perspective on the value of life is far different. And the difference is, and this is what I'm getting at, because as you know, I grew up in a Muslim household, and people would think right away, oh, your mom was Muslim, so you're pro-Muslim. Nothing could be further from this truth. The inherent problem I see with it is that people are given like grades, levels. Like my life is of more value because I'm Muslim and you're not. That's a problem. To me, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a battle of classes.
It's like classes, like right. And it's like literally there. If you're not Muslim, for example, and we're at war, I can rape your women. Like, wait a minute, isn't rape evil no matter what religion you are?
Right. And it's interesting because we can take that and apply that to a lot of different religions too. If we look at something like Jehovah's Witnesses, or if we look at like there's like if you were either a part of our fold or you were on the outside.
Or you're on the outside.
Yeah,
which is why I have lost I am not religious. I'm spiritual. I certainly believe in God. I certainly believe there's an architect to all of this, but he's certainly not anything replicate or close to looking the way they envision him in all of these books that I believe were man-made. Right. I believe a lot of these books come from ancient times, and they're just a story retold differently over eons or epochs. Right. So. Yeah. But anyway, back to 9/11.
Oh yeah,
we're deviating way
That's
off
okay,
this.
Man. Listen, we'll take sidetracks, okay? I'm in. Let's go.
So I think we covered a lot, man. You've done great because
I try to make it easy for you.
You made it easy for me,
okay,
which is great. And now, okay, and we talked about your military story. Is there anything else that we should talk about that you think we've left off?
Maybe the fact that I should be wearing pants right now.
Hey, you're not supposed to say that. No one's supposed to know you're not wearing pants.
Gotta edit that.
You're wearing.
They're shorts.
Okay, but you're wearing shorts.
I'm wearing shorts.
Well, now you gotta stand up because people are gonna think that you're referring to being like you're going commando. You're just sitting there, and I'm just acting like there's nothing wrong.
That's gonna be a hard edit right there. I just feel really like like life gives you lemons, trade them in for limes, and make margaritas, right? Like we gotta just keep moving forward no matter what.
Oh, you went from lemonade to margaritas.
Oh yeah. Why bother? No middle ground. But yeah, I think it's just really, you have to accept these challenges, whatever it is. And you can have all the knowledge in the world. Just putting it back to photography even for a second. You can have all the knowledge in the world, and you can have all the best equipment in the world, but you also have to put yourself into that situation. And so, you take those three things, you put them together, and that's how you have someone that can really be impactful. And so I guess I would encourage people to get involved in things, whether it's, volunteering with the fire department, or whether it's joining the Red Cross, which is something else that I do on the side. It's a great organization. There's a lot of great organizations out there. And that's how you can really be impactful, and you become a force multiplier, because now you become good at your job, you show other people how to do it. Now, guess what? You've made a substantial change. And so I just would encourage people to consider, getting involved in those programs.
So what kind of programs are you involved? Because I know you were was it the red, white, and blue team? Or?
Team Rubicon. Yeah, I was
Team
with
Rubicon. So talk about that. So Team Rubicon?
Yeah, even before that. So I started out with Salvation Army, Emergency Disaster Services. My father was in charge of the county back in New Jersey, and so he kind of got me into that. So I worked with Salvation Army EDS. I worked with Team Rubicon. Got deployed a couple times.
To where?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. We went to Texas a bunch of times. Bahamas.
For what?
Hurricanes and flooding and all sorts of different things.
Let me know that. So it was hurricanes and floodings.
Right. Okay. Absolutely.
You made it sound like you're going on vacation. You're like, well, I went to Texas. I went to the Caribbean. I'm like, everybody's like, oh, he's chilling. Like, no, for disasters.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because you're going generally these things happen in beautiful areas.
Exactly. And that's why I had to break down. I'm trying to be a better host.
Right.
I'm trying to
No, you're solid, man. You're solid.
I'm pulling it out because because I want people to know it's not for vacation. You're
Right.
there for disasters.
Absolutely. But you go in, you go in there and you do your role, and it's just, you see the difference. You're literally boots on the ground in these areas that have been so horribly affected, and so you have a story to tell. You can then try to recruit other people or get other people involved.
But you don't become in the front page of a newspaper. You're doing this because you enjoy to help people.
It makes a difference.
It gives you purpose.
There's no better thing in life than to serve others. I'm telling you. There's so much more that we can do, and so I think that just if everybody just gave a little bit,
I think the same way.
Oh man, what a difference it makes.
Which is why we created, and I say we because you helped me create this.
Right.
Well, I had the vision, but I had a hard challenge putting it together, and you helped me put the brief together at Syracuse University in 2018. And I did the brief of the Warfighter Sanctuary.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's right, Cuzzo.
Yeah, so we are both both graduates of the EBV, the Entrepreneurial Boot Camp for Veterans, that's hosted by Syracuse University.
And I get an honorary alumni status from Syracuse University for my couple of months course. So it's honorary though. I'm not going to sit there and lie.
Okay.
But I do got a real degree, MBA, of course, from USF and FIU.
Yeah.
But yes, I went through Syracuse University. That's where you were. How many degrees you have from there? You have
from Syracuse, I have 2 master's degrees, and then
2 masters in what?
I have a master's in public relations and then a second master's in international relations. So I went to both the Newhouse School and the Maxwell School. I also attended a year of law school. Was not really a fit for me. It was not where I was comfortable, and honestly, my goal wasn't ever to become a lawyer. Anyways, it was to teach, and so this seemed like a much smarter approach in order to do that. But Syracuse definitely offered me a lot of opportunities. Was able to bang out the 2 master's degrees, a year of law school, plus 3 different certificate in advanced studies, all in about 3 years. So it was really, don't get me wrong, I hustled. I would never be like, yes, you can do this in 3 years, because generally, no. Yeah. But, I think being an older student attending made a big difference. Having a good support structure makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And then the Army's vocational rehab, voc rehab, really
program,
it was
that's how I got my master's in business.
That was huge.
Voc rehab,
absolutely.
Look into it, folks, if you're not familiar with it, or give me a call.
Not only that, but also even trying to get into the law school. A law school, is not cheap, and voc rehab did not want to pay for it all.
You had to fight for it. You had to advocate for yourself.
You have to advocate for yourself. I had the DAV working on my side as well, and then on top of that, I was able to get apply for scholarships. And there's so many scholarships out there, but people don't know that. They don't realize that. And so look it up, do your homework, dig, be diligent, because if you want to go back to school, if you don't have a degree, there's so many opportunities, especially for veterans. To get that funding. So definitely look into was the Yellow Ribbon program that some schools have,
a bunch of other things,
so many different things.
So many different things, and that's the vision. Eventually, the website VeteranNet, Veterans Resource Network, which sponsors this podcast, which is a veteran business directory. I wanted to have all those resources that would help veterans, get on the right track.
Right.
Because that's one of the biggest challenges. We get off of active duty and we don't know what to do with the rest of our life. And having purpose, just like we've talked about it, having purpose is so important. Being a part of Team Rubicon, being a part of that Salvation Army, the emergency response team, Red Cross, just being able to do those things. Because again, whatever it was that drove you to the military, that urge to want to be something bigger than yourself, did it disappear when you left the military?
Absolutely
Obviously not, because look at all the different things you accomplished afterwards, besides college, besides master's degrees, besides Team Rubicon and all those other different organizations that you're involved with.
Right. And the ironic part too with all that is just, I barely graduated high school. Right, like I almost dropped out of high school.
Well, I dropped out. No, I totally dropped out. I have a master's degree, so there you go. You can do it.
Exactly. That's the point, right? Like so many people were like, oh, I could never do that. I could never do that. Let me tell you something. There's 2 types of people. The people who decide to try, and the people who are like just to succumb to it and say, it's not for me. It's never going to happen. Whatever it is, it's possible. It is absolutely possible.
But with that said, thank you so much for attending the Warfighter Sanctuary podcast. Please remember to subscribe, follow. We interview veteran businesses here, and don't forget to check the Veterans Resource Network, or VeteranNet, VeteranNet.com. That is Victor Echo Tango Romeo Echo November Echo Tango, VeteranNet. I hope I spelled that right, .com. And Rob, tell us where we can find you, your business, your website. Please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our audience know.
You can check us out at 123imaging.com. We're also on all the socials, so you can find us there as well.
Okay? 123imaging.com. And with that, Warfighter Sanctuary podcast out. We'll see you next week.
That wraps up another episode of Warfighter Sanctuary. Thank you for listening. For more information on Vetranet and the businesses featured in this podcast, be sure to check out our website at vetranet.com. That's www.VictorEchoTangoRomeoEchoNovemberEchoTango.com. Become a Patreon subscriber and get VIP access to the Blue Falcon Show, where we continue the interview with their unfiltered thoughts on a range of topics. Some serious, some trivial, always entertaining. Like and follow our Facebook page to join the community at facebook.com/groups/Vetranet. Intro music provided by Army veteran Sabo of NSA Entertainment. Post-show music provided by Marine veteran Justin Martin of JLM Entertainment. Voiceover provided by Marine veteran Mark Denstead of voicedbymark.com. Until next time, remember, hiring a veteran is thanking a veteran. Thank you for your support.